This is Calabash Community, and now our conversation with John Robert Lee moves to the city of Castries as he remembers it as a boy growing up in La Caille, just a mile away. So let's talk about city remembrances. First of all, the city of Castries. I don't know if you grew up in Castries, but the city
I grew up just outside of Castries, the Vidbuté Road.
Okay.
You know, when you leave, where the Adventist church is now, Maranatha,
Yes.
the McNamara's used to have, that was their home. So you leave that house, and as you turn the corner and go up, I lived on that road there, before you actually enter La Caille proper. So that's where I actually grew up, not far from Castries, but in those days that was almost country.
Castries. Oh, that was country.
That was almost country.
Right.
It was Castries, called Vidbuté Road, not even La Caille. I remember when the first street lamps came on. We had to call that area Caille. People listening would know that. We call that area Caille because of the soil, a kind of clayey soil. So I actually grew up there. Of course, I went to school in Castries, Anglican schools. My aunt and cousins lived on Trinity Church Road, which I write about in my poetry. So I spent a lot of time there with them. Eventually, they also moved to Caille with us. So while I didn't grow up in Castries like a lot of our Castries friends, Kendall Hippel grew up in Castries, Chisel Street. I grew up outside, but of course, I was always in Castries. And as a young man, Castries was my stomping ground.
We have got a number of cities getting celebrated, and you celebrating
Yes.
Castries in your book, City Remembrances. But and you may correct me if I'm wrong. To me, Castries is not as celebrated as other cities, like they do in Europe and some other parts. I don't know if it's the Caribbean thing that we don't celebrate our cities.
That may be right. Although I would say poets like Walcott have celebrated Port of Spain in their writing. If we make a connection, poetry and calypso, when I grew up in the 50s, the music was Sparrow. We grew up on Sparrow and Kitchen, these guys. And we learned about Frederick Street.
That's right.
And Prince Street and Duke Street and the Savannah by hearing about these. And I think in a subconscious way, perhaps, that has influenced my own writing. As in my poems, I've come to mention, I've put the place names of my country. Now, I do it more for the Castries area where I grew up and Babonneau where I live. I don't really mention so much Vieux-Fort and so on because I don't really move in those areas. But the areas I know, like Castries, the streets, Marianne Street, Broadley Street, Coral Street, in a sense, the influence might be the Calypsonians. So I think Shadow, David Ruddock, Sparrow. I say if we writers would get what these guys do in their songs, in our poetry, of course we come to Invader and Pep and Shanty and our local guys. If we could get what these guys do, and Bob Marley, talking about Trench Town and so forth. So there is a tradition of naming our countries and our cities. Poets probably have done it, as you say. I'm not greatly Kendall Hippel. With myself, we've done a lot of Castries, naming of Castries together. And I definitely echo Kendall a lot in what I do. Dixon, over the years, has done things about St. Lucia. He's written poems set around St. Lucia and Castries of the 50s and 60s, you know. That place down, I'm trying to remember the place down by the harbor, a famous road, a famous street. It slips me in.
Hospital Road.
Not Hospital Road, past Hospital Road. Right now where you have there used to be a Prince Alfred Basin there. There's a famous road there, well known for its nightclubs and nightlife.
Right.
I forget the name now, but Dixon mentions a place like this. So in a sense, I'm not alone. So I'm following the example of those. And people like Latimer Lucien now and Jane King are coming to do the same thing.
Okay.
But for me, yes, it's important to mention Castries, my city, and it brings the poetry to life for my own readers here. But as Walcott has done, when people outside of St. Lucia read, they become familiar. People will tell you they've studied Walcott's work. When they come, they see it all there. They say, hey, of course, we read about this in Walcott. So we, Kendall, myself, others who are writing now, when people read our work, they come to visit our country. They see Castries, they say, yeah, but I read about Marianne Street. Oh, that's Broadley Street. As writers in America and England and Europe and everywhere and Africa have done for their own countries.
Right, that's what I was asking about Castries. To me, I know we have a few, but not as many as
maybe
should,
not as
Castries
obviously.
Has an amazing history. I mean, as a city itself.
Fires.
Yes.
Exactly.
And all that's been celebrated through Walcott's work and so on.
Exactly,
So we've had quite a bit of history.
And the Walcott House, which has just been reopened on 17 Chaussee Road, which I just want to drop in quickly here, was, when it was first sold, to whom? Gus Justin. What was there? A printry. And what happened there? People like myself and Kendall, through Pat Charles, a great friend of ours, published our first books of poetry at Lithographic Press, which was the old Walcott Home, which is now being re-established as the Walcott Place. And I think that's significant. I would have liked to hear that mentioned at the opening, that house was a printry.
That's right. Yeah.
I remember actually when my first book was done in 75, Derek was here to organize his play Joker of Seville. Pat Charles and I met him. He was talking to us about arrangements here. And he heard we were doing my first book. He actually said, I want to go. So he went with us to the house. It was the first time I think he'd visited his old house for many, many years. And in Omerus, he actually mentions going up the steps and remembering the old bedroom. I think that's from that visit. Pat Charles and myself took him there, and he saw my first book, Vocation, at the time. So Walcott House and printing and literature, there is a real physical connection with printing of local literature, and of course Walcott, our writer.
This is Calabash Community. Still ahead, we will chat with Robert Lee about City Remembrances, his latest publication, heavily influenced by the city of Castries.